Welcome to Construction Week Viewpoint. Today we are talking about what the future holds for sustainable construction in the Middle East. It's a very vast topic with a range of different areas to consider, from the financial implications of building smarter to the environmental concerns around being more sustainable across the life cycle of a project. So I'm joined in the studio, as always, by Jack Ball, Construction Week's senior reporter. Jack, back again, looking very smart today.
Again. Thank you very much, Oscar. I can't say the same for you, but yeah.
Well, you are a beacon of professionalism and honesty. It's a casual Thursday as well, so I felt like it was okay to dress down. And of course, you had an interview as well. But
I did.
I think we'll rattle through this podcast quite quickly because there's a range of different things to talk about when we think about sustainable construction. And there are a range of, as I mentioned, different issues to consider. Mm-hmm. But fundamentally, meeting kind of the infrastructure and housing demands of urbanization between now and 2050, when the United Nations expects around more than 2/3 of people will be living in cities by then, is just going to create huge challenges, not just for construction, but for sustainable construction, because already there is global pressure to meet kind of these unprecedented demands of urbanization. And for construction companies to do that in a way that is supportive of their individual economic growth and also the economic growth of the markets within which they're operating, and building sustainably, but also in a way that doesn't pollute the environment or irrevocably harm the planet, and also supports their balance sheets, is a really pressing issue.
It's also approaching a manner of design that's also appealing to those who will be living in these communities and also buying. So it's also the commercial realities aligned with the kind of design needs of a sustainable future is something that I think that dynamic is something we're going to see play out, as you said, in that time frame between now and 2050.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you're going to see a lot of work. And people are already talking about how you address these challenges moving forwards. Construction Week recently interviewed the global chief executive of RICS, the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, Sean Tompkins, and he was telling us that, look, these unprecedented changes aren't going to happen without a global concerted effort. And he's not the only one talking about the need for kind of like major innovation in the way we think, design, and build sustainably.
No, absolutely. I think that was touched on Construction Weeks, leaders in the UAE summit that we hosted, I think a couple months back now, wasn't it, Oscar? Yeah. And that became quite a central theme towards the kind of middle of the day in how we approach design. One of the one of the major speeches from Yahya Yan from Noor, he was mentioning in a very quite emotive speech about how there's a tremendous innovation deficit that we're seeing in the design space, particularly around sustainable construction and design of urban localities. And he was mentioning that the way we design cities at the moment, and I think you'd agree, and a lot of people in the market would agree, is less than desirable. And he was very concerted in his opinion on this topic, and he said that it's time now for us to reconsider, how we design and how we build. I think that's a very kind of crucial tenet for a lot of what we're seeing now.
I think it is, and you're right, Jack. It is, and Yahya Jan, of course, is right as well, that there is a tremendous innovation deficit in the market. But he said, great design can save the world. And fine, it might be slightly kind of sensationalist and PR-y, but there is a genuine message there. Absolutely. And one that construction stakeholders and aficionados, captains of industry across the world will be looking at and saying, we need to design in a better way. And, while Yahya Jan spoke about that kind of gulf in innovation regarding sustainable construction, that's not to say that companies in the GCC are not involved in the space or neglecting it at all. I was recently speaking to Akiona, and they have developing kind of new construction products using biomaterials and natural fibers. Now, this covers the entire value chain from synthesis, manufacturing, validation, and industrial scaling. And they're developing these products as part of a European-wide kind of body, looking at exploring different ways to build sustainably. It's kind of, a big R&D effort. And it's also part of kind of Akiona's internal strategy to reduce dependence on products that are made using fossil fuels, which of course, you look at some of the major projects and products that we use. Fossil fuels are a major part of that, and of course they're a major contributor to carbon emissions. And by using kind of natural fibers and biomaterials, you can ensure that your supply chain is more sustainable and environmentally friendly, using kind of more sustainable products.
I mean, I think Acciona was also looking at a laser guidance system, wasn't it, as well? Is that Acciona as well?
Yeah, that's Acciona. So they've developed a laser guidance system for building tunnels without tunneling or boring machines. Yeah. Now, of course, this is a system that's been used to great effect in Spain on Acciona's projects, but it has not been used, as far as we are aware, in the Middle East. But essentially, the system can increase excavation precision by more than 60%. And of course, this helps to avoid kind of cost overruns and unnecessary excavation caused by deviations. So, you can imagine in places like Oman or the more mountainous regions in the UAE where roads are not built yet, you have to blast through, thick layers of rock. And that's an incredibly precise, execution and project. And actually, if you have a laser guidance system that helps kind of cost overruns and stuff, it increases the efficiency of the project and increases the sustainability of it because you're reducing the amount of waste you create. And of course, that's sustainable in terms of the business model for Acciona as well, because they're not kind of costs aren't overrunning and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And that's one private sector name that is clearly leading the way in some respects. But also, if you look at the government efforts, particularly in the Middle East and the UAE, notably, their green efforts are something that really should be commended as well. Even yesterday it was announced that the UAE's Minister of Climate Change and Environment announced that the Emirate would be giving $4.5 million cumulatively, to fund projects carried out by the Global Green Growth Initiative, which runs off the back of their previous green efforts and their ongoing ones too.
Exactly, and in previous podcasts, Jack, and of course our listeners will be aware of that as well. We've spoken and we've touched on different sustainability aspects. We've looked at why retrofitting is key to survival. We've looked at some of the major sustainability projects, not just in the UAE, such as the Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Solar Park, but also the solar energy plant and park in Saudi Arabia. But going back to the UAE's contribution, investing $4.5 million, in sustainable development. You look at some of their goals. Of course, the Dubai municipality's green building specifications first became mandatory for new government buildings in 2011. And, on the back of that as well, you've got all of these vast strategies for kind of like energy efficiency and improving and diversifying the energy mix. For example, the UAE Energy Plan for 2050. Now, I think they aim to cut carbon dioxide emissions by around 70%, increase the contribution of clean energy in the total energy mix to around 50%, and improve energy efficiency by around 40%. Of course, this is all leading up to 2050. And there are estimates that say this will kind of lead to a targeted saving of approximately $191 billion. So they're absolutely looking at, in the public sector, they're looking at ways to be more sustainable. But going back to the private sector, Jack, we touched on Acciona, and I think it's important to mention Acciona is not the only one that is exploring sustainable construction. Of course, all the big names and of course some of the smaller ones as well will be looking at this and will be incorporating initiatives into their execution models and the ways to move projects forward. For example, ASGC, Construction Week's Contractor of the Year for 2017, 85% of their projects and 100% of their projects indoors are monitored using drones. Now, this is not really a sustainability angle. You could argue this is more about investment in technology, which is something that ASGC is really pushing at the moment. But there is an aspect to sustainability here, and that is that the drones can be used to kind of take measurements and carry out spot checks on challenging projects, which enables ASGC to kind of mitigate risks of a project and optimize time and cost. So when we think about sustainable construction, it's not just about construction that is sustainable from an environmental perspective as well. We also need to think about how construction is economically sustainable for these businesses as well, because they're going to come under increased pressure.
They're businesses at the end of the day, so they need to keep their balance sheet in check too. Yeah, and obviously there's a kind of environmental cost, but also there's a commercial reality too.
And squaring those two as well is really important, Jack. But I think these companies and other companies have shown that it is possible to have a business model that is socially conscious, environmentally friendly, and also economically viable as well. And that's, I think a lot of companies will be moving this kind of business model moving forward. But on ASGC, kind of looking at their sustainability projects, one that, of course, stands out is the fact that they're building Expo 2020 Sustainability Pavilion.
And absolutely, and this is the project that we've touched on in, I think, quite a few podcasts.
Of course.
Particularly the green angle and the sustainability angle is... And this is an example that's brought up by the figures that we interview as well when we touch on this space.
Yeah.
And the future of construction, Expo Sustainability's Pavilion is a project that's really leading the way in terms of hopefully guiding what buildings in the future can learn from the project.
Well, exactly. It's very much a showcase and a demonstration of what a building could be like moving forward. So, for example, it's going to... they expect it to exceed the LEED Platinum certification. Of course, solar panels on the plant will generate kind of 4 gigawatts of electricity per year, which is enough to power, I think, around 4,000 homes. I believe there was a statistic that came out from the Expo 2020 team on social media that said the Sustainability Pavilion will be able to charge hundreds of thousands of mobile phones with the electricity it generates. And of course, any surplus energy that it generates will be fed into DEWA's grid. That DEWA, of course, is the Dubai Water and Electricity Authority.
No, I think that's really interesting, actually. And looking ahead in terms of water as well, water is a scarce commodity in the region. Again, the pavilion is leading the way there. It can produce up to 22,000, I think, litres of water per day using an atmospheric humidity harvesting system.
Which is incredibly fascinating.
Yeah,
so essentially
weird.
what that does, Jack, and we've touched on this in other podcasts, and of course if people are interested in this, there's a lot more information, detailed information on the website, but essentially that sucks moisture out of the air and turns it into water, which is incredible. And on that point as well, I should just mention that it is the Dubai Electricity and Water Authority, not the Dubai Water and Electricity Authority, as I incorrectly said just now. So just to clarify that for the record.
What good journalist does, buddy. Yeah.
But yeah, and of course, Sustainability Pavilion as well will use recycled grey water. So ASGC, Acciona are both looking at very different ways about how sustainable construction can work in the future. And I think they're proving that, I go back to the point I made earlier, it is possible to have a business model that is environmentally friendly, socially conscious, and economically viable. And I think that's the really important message that construction companies need to follow, moving forwards.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how they can learn from the Sustainability Pavilion and see how they kind of negate that between commercial realities and their, I guess, social responsibilities as well.
I think so. Well, and I think it's probably a good point to end it on because our light has just gone out. So I will say thank you so much, Jack, for your time.
Thank you so much, Oscar.
Yeah,
cheers.
Well, you've been listening to the Construction Week Viewpoint podcast. We hope you've enjoyed hearing about the future of sustainable construction. Next week, we will have a special guest, Jack, don't we?
We do indeed. We have a line site coming in. They're going to be having a chat with me. They are one of Dubai's leading real estate consultancies. So they will be here in the morning. So check out that in a couple of days following, around Monday, Tuesday. I think we'll produce that podcast.
Well, yeah, that will come out on Monday as always.
Yeah,
but until then, thank you very much for listening and goodbye.